The medical evacuation bill wasn't the only bill introduced in the Senate today. Centre Alliance crossbencher Senator Rex Patrick has introduced a bill to ban cotton exports in a bid to save the Murray-Darling River system. Cotton irrigators have been accused of taking more than their fair share of water, reducing the Darling River to puddles in some parts of northwest New South Wales.
Well, for more, we're joined now by Centre Alliance Senator Rex Patrick, who joins us from Canberra, and also in Canberra is Adam Kay, CEO at Cotton Australia. Good evening to both of you.
Good evening, Karina.
Senator, if I can begin with you, why do you want to introduce this bill which will effectively prohibit cotton as a good?
Well, cotton is a very water-intensive crop. 90% of it is exported, and in effect what we're doing is exporting water, and we live on the driest inhabited continent on the planet. It's simply not in the national interest to do so.
Cotton growers would probably say they're not exporting water, they're exporting a product, and indeed it's a $2 billion industry. Does that concern come into the rationale when introducing this bill?
Look, it does. There has to be a context to this bill, and that is that we know there are problems on the Murray-Darling. We know that people in Walgett are not drinking river water. We know all about the fish kills in Menindee. The river is dying. We've just had a Royal Commissioner hand down a report that has stated that the current plan that we're operating from is both legally and scientifically flawed and doesn't take into account climate change. We need to do something with the river, and unfortunately we've got a number of players. We've got national politicians right around the country saying, no, there's no problem. They're in denial.
Adam Kay, yours is a water-intensive industry. You can't deny that when towns are running dry.
I think we can, because one of the things that the Royal Commissioner said is that we've got to stop this rhetoric about cotton being a thirsty crop, because it isn't. It's mid-range in water use of the irrigated summer crops. So if we want to start quoting the Royal Commission, we've got to start looking at some of the things he said. And he also said that we shouldn't demonise cotton, and so they were right up front.
Unfortunately, we can't cherry pick just the bits we like out of the Royal Commissioner's report.
That's not cherry picking.
My proposal is
no
that we
stage
take all of
did
the recommendations of the Royal Commissioner's report and we adopt them. Don't cherry pick from the report. That's not appropriate.
No, that's the only times that he has mentioned cotton in that report was to say that the rhetoric about cotton being a thirsty crop should stop.
Do you accept the findings of the Royal Commissioner, Adam?
The findings of the Royal Commission just throw into doubt the interpretation of the Water Act. And
what happened is Cotton Australia has lost its social licence in this, and they need to rethink. What my bill does is puts up a very, very big red flag that says we need to really start thinking about how we solve this problem. If Cotton Australia wants to ignore that there is a problem, if they want to live in denial, then they run the risk of my bill eventually passing through the Parliament. My preference is that everyone sits around the table, looks at water allocation, says what's fair, and that can include cotton growers. But right now we have a significant portion of the river water, being used to grow cotton, and that cotton is simply exported out of the country. We need to look at a more balanced approach to the Murray-Darling Basin. It's a $22 billion hub. It's our food bowl. We need to think very carefully about the mix of crops that we grow across the basin.
Okay, Senator Patrick, let's let Adam Kay respond to that.
Over half of the cotton crop that's been planted this year is rain-grown cotton or outside the Murray-Darling Basin. So you can imagine the impact that would have on those farmers to hear this debate that you want to stop them when they've got no impact on the Murray-Darling Basin. This is a disgraceful attack on a world-class industry that is struggling with drought as well. And this is going to impact the mental health of these farmers that are struggling with drought. And there is no support from the major parties here. This is going nowhere. This is just a political stunt aimed at a world-class industry.
Gentlemen, one of the findings from the Murray-Darling Basin Royal Commissioner Brett Walker was that people or corporations should be able to do what they want with the water that they have been allocated. as it comes from that, should the debate now not centre over these licences and how much people or corporations are getting, and looking at that framework?
Exactly, and that's what we're saying. You know, the Commissioner hasn't singled out cotton, and you know, we're halfway through the implementation of the Murray-Darling Basin Plan. We've got more than half the water back. Over 2,000 gigalitres has been recovered, and there's more to come. And yes, there's been a terrible ecological disaster out on the Darling, but there's no evidence that is from cotton production. No evidence at all about cotton production, and we should be waiting until both the Labor Party and the government have commissioned inquiries into what caused the fish deaths.
Senator Patrick, in response to that, you mentioned with your bill that you wanted to start a conversation about this very issue. Is that not a good starting point with respect to the regulation of licences?
Well, I think we need to look right across the basin. Let me give you an example of something I saw 2 weeks ago in southern New South Wales. I left Dubbo with the Macquarie River flowing at 1,665 megalitres per day. By the time I had driven 3 hours north, there was no water flowing, and between those 2 points, on the same river, between those 2 points, all that existed was irrigation farms. No water was being let through down that river to places like Bawarrina and Burke, which are running out of water. That's not appropriate. The rules are not working. And in fact, you know, we've got Cotton Australia saying, look, let's wait and see how the plan works. Let's follow what Brett Walker has said. Brett Walker has said that the allocations are not scientifically based. The sustainable diversion limits are not scientifically or legally based. The number shouldn't be 3,200 gigalitres. It should start with a 4. And until people start to recognise that we need to pay attention to the science, of course we're going to have bills like mine that seek to solve the problem in a different way.
The thing that Senator Patrick just mentioned about the water at Dubbo, that water is carryover water that irrigators are able to not use the previous year and to even out their production.
You're trying to spin it. There are people down the river that don't have any water.
It's not
that's
spin.
Not a responsible way to manage water.
The Macquarie River doesn't connect.
Senator Patrick, if we can let Adam Kay please finish his...
Sure.
The Macquarie River goes down to the Macquarie marshes, and very little water gets through anyhow. If you'd have been there 2 months before, you would have seen the release of 130 billion litres of water down to the Macquarie marshes, and only 3 billion litres go through. It's a massive sponge, and that wetland is in extraordinary health at the moment. It's really good. It was just the time that you went through. If you'd have been there 2 months earlier, you would have seen a massive river going down to the wetland.
Adam Kay, you said that 50% of cotton grown this year was grown outside of the Murray-Darling River basin area, but in other years it can be as high as 95%. Is that correct?
It varies from year to year, depending on the amount of rain-grown cotton. So it does vary, but you know, certainly this season, over 50% is either rain-grown cotton or outside the basin.
And when you said that you wanted to deny that it's a water-intensive industry, that the largest volume of irrigation water used by cotton, it's used by cotton, isn't it, at 26%?
Yes, cotton uses the irrigation water because the farmers choose to use their water on the crop that is the most profitable. And if cotton was banned, as Senator Patrick is trying to do, well, then the farmers would use the same amount of water to grow the next most profitable crop. So it might be soybeans or corn, which use the same amount of water. So there would be no water saving. All it would impact on is the incomes of the farmers and the revenue to our country.
If that's the case, Senator Patrick, why launch the bill, or do you not agree with this statement?
Well, I don't agree with the statement. I've been up to Queensland. I've flown over St George and Dalby and Goondiwindi, where there are expanding cotton farms. And yes, farmers are trying to maximise the amount of money, but unfortunately they're doing it by exporting our river. It is not in the national interest. This is not an argument about money. This is an argument about national interest, and it's not in the national interest to export water when we have the driest inhabited continent on the planet.
Senator Patrick, cotton is an annual crop. Farmers can choose not to plant during a drought year and sell their water allocation, and that it's possible that they may only need 3 good out of 5 years to be viable. So isn't that a buffer in itself?
Well, once again, once we get over the denials that we're seeing from the Royal Commissioner's report, we can all sit at the table and work out what is the right mix of crop to have across our basin. I'm all for that. Unfortunately, what we've got is an expanding industry driven by profits and at the expense of our river system, and that's just not acceptable.
What country are we living in where the government's going to tell farmers what mix of crops they can grow? The countries that do that are North Korea and Cuba. You know, that's just so un-Australian to be telling farmers what crops they can grow. I can't believe what you're saying.
Often in the national interest we make choices. One of the choices we're on the cusp of making is that we don't export live sheep. Another choice we make is that we don't export uranium to particular countries, and we also don't export defence equipment to particular countries. We need to look at this from a national interest perspective. Look, I'm not against cotton farmers. I would like to see a solution to this where everyone sits at the table, everyone recognises what Brett Walker has said in his findings in the Royal Commission, look at his recommendations and come up with a sensible solution. But if we're going to have people like Cotton Australia in denial, if we're going to have Barnaby Joyce in denial, if we're going to have Niall Blair in denial, if we're going to have David Littleproud in denial, then we have to do something different.
Senator, is your bill a sensible solution, though? Is there some common ground that you can meet with the cotton growers?
The moment I hear Adam Kay tell me that he wants to sit around the table and talk about the Royal Commissioner's report in its totality and its recommendations, I'll be there.
The plan that we have is called the Murray-Darling Basin Plan, and we've sat around the table for a number of years and we're halfway into its implementation. There is still more water to recover for that plan, and that's the plan we should be discussing, not throwing it out and starting again.
But would you, Adam Kay, be responsive to meeting with the Senator to discuss issues outside the plan and solutions outside the Murray-Darling Basin Plan? I
have sat with the Senator and had these sorts of discussions and talked through things, but he just can't understand that it's not about cotton. It's about the irrigation industry. If we didn't grow cotton, the farmers would use that water to grow the next most profitable crop. And, you know, I think irrigators in South Australia would be scared. I'm sure they're producing crops that are exported, be it citrus or almonds or alike. And if you apply this logic, they're exporting water as well.
So, Adam Kay, if the cotton industry is not willing to compromise at all, where do the changes need to come from?
Look, we're happy to go with the science, and that's what we've done with the Murray-Darling Basin Plan. And Senator Patrick's not talking about the science; he's talking about the Royal Commission in South Australia that threw doubt on the interpretation of the Water Act, and that's for someone above my pay grade, for the legals to sort that out. And when they sort that out, I'm sure we can have some more discussions.
Is there a more efficient way for cotton farmers to use water, grow the crop?
Well, look, we've improved our water use efficiency. We can clearly document by more than 40% in the last decade. We've got an incredibly water efficient industry, and we're looked up to globally. Our yields are 3 times the global average. We've been able to reduce our pesticide use by 90%. We're talking about a world-class industry, our modern industry. Things have changed from 20 or 30 years ago. We've improved, and I'd invite people to come out and have a look at this industry, because when I travel around the world, people hold us up and we are the gold standard.
Senator Patrick, you would acknowledge that that's correct, wouldn't you, that irrigation water use efficiency, that has doubled since the year 2000, so there are advances being made on this?
Well, I don't accept the 40%. Adam has actually provided me with some details on that, but there's no. It's quite a tangled mess to get to that 40% number. But look, I'll accept that there has been efficiencies, but that's not the problem we're talking about. Adam says that the Royal Commissioner didn't look at this from a scientific perspective. He clearly has not read any of the evidence that was taken by the Royal Commissioner, and he hasn't read the full report by the Royal Commissioner. He made it very clear that the number that is being used, the 3,200 gigalitre number, is just simply wrong scientifically. It should be a number starting with 4, not 3.
But Senator Patrick, Adam Kay makes another good point that you simply don't have the political support in Parliament for this to get any further, do you?
I don't think that's correct. Adam probably doesn't, or he won't know this, but tonight my bill was referred to committee. If it didn't have the support didn't have the support as he suggested, that would not have occurred. Now, what that means is now the bill will go to a committee. The committee will call for submissions, and Adam, Cotton Australia, can make a submission, as can every other Australian, as to the merits of my bill, and they can look at it purely from an economic perspective if they like, and they can also look at it from a national interest perspective. And we may end up a year down track where we've got no changes in the Murray-Darling Basin plan because it's so hard to change. You need 5 states to agree and the federal parliament to agree. That's not the case with my bill. We might get to a point where we say, we agree that there will be no exporting of cotton, but there will be a licence that permits the export if, for example, the cotton grower can prove that his or her cotton was not grown using floodplain harvesting.
Adam Kay, can I just ask, what's your response to that, a licence with conditions?
Look, we've already got, water is heavily licensed with conditions, and, I think what the Senator is planning is just more regulation, more red tape. It is already very strict licence conditions. Yes, but you're targeting the wrong industry in your attempts to save the river. We all want to, see the Murray-Darling Basin system in better health, and that's what the Murray-Darling Basin plan is all about, recovering more water.
Which industry should be targeted, Adam Kay?
We should be implementing the plan. That's the buybacks. It's not about industries. It's about the recovery of water, be it through infrastructure investments or buybacks, to recover the water for the environment.
OK, gentlemen, we are out of time. Senator, we will watch the passage of this bill and how it progresses with keen interest. Senator Rex Patrick from the Centre Alliance and Adam Kay, CEO of Cotton Australia. Thank you both for your time this evening.
Thank you.